I thought it was close. I thought I had him in the early rounds. I thought he was getting in the middle towards the end. Where was the final 2 rounds? Let me wobble back to my corner. Let me try and recompose myself. You know what I mean? You've got to put me out. I'm brand new. I'm clear spoken. It's not bothering me, so I don't know what way to feel, to be honest. I'm just happy I'm draped in the flag. Happy I was able to bring my team along, the country with me, and just get in and perform for a different crowd. No one's taking these type of risks, so fuck it. You can lay into me all you want. I'll take it on the chin. I'll take it wrapped around the neck on live TV. I've took them both, so it's another day for me.
Welcome to the Reindl Report.
Hey, here's a hot take for you. Steph Curry, most overrated basketball player I've ever seen.
A podcast out of San Diego, California that rewrites the definition of mediocrity.
Yeah, and I don't trust anyone that calls a hot dog a sandwich. Are you crazy?
Are you stupid or something?
And I'll tell you another thing. You know what? I think pineapples do belong on pizza.
Almost as stupid as stupid does.
I think watching pitchers try to hit in baseball is one of the worst things in all of sports.
Oh my God, Paul, you make me so mad sometimes.
And I don't want to hear any of this 6-0 in the finals. LeBron James will retire as the GOAT.
Shut the up! Now, here's your host, Paul Reindl.
All right. Welcome to it. Another episode of the Reindl Report. This is episode 52. It is the Reindl Report. I am Paul Reindl. This is a San Diego sports podcast, episode 52, and we're doing it live from my living room. That is right. I don't do it too often. Don't get a chance as much as I'd like to maybe do a podcast from the comfort of my own home, I should say. But, that's kind of the perks of working for a radio station. When you got the professional equipment, you're not going to not use it. But, hey, I got my, like $30 or $40 microphone. We'll see how it works. Hopefully the quality stands up. Just, hopefully it lasts. This probably won't be too long of a podcast. Got a few things that I definitely want to get to. Took last week off, little vacation, I guess, little hiatus from the podcast. I missed you. I'm sure you cannot say the same that you missed me. That's okay. Hope everyone is having a good time wherever you're at, however you're listening to this podcast. I don't want to say good night or a good morning because I don't know when you're listening to this podcast, to be honest. Podcast coming out on Monday, August 28th, but coming in late, so maybe it is Tuesday or even Wednesday by the time you're hearing this podcast. But how about that? God, August already, just about over. 2017 just flying by. Before we get into the podcast, just saw on my laptop here, I had a window open. I got, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. I got 5 tabs open, and one of them is YouTube, because I was watching the trailer for Ozark. Looks like it's a new, Netflix original, new Netflix show. So please send your condolences, send your T's and P's, your thoughts and your prayers my way, because when I start a new show, if it looks at all intriguing to me, it's bad news bears for the big guy, because I'm not going to be very productive. If this thing is any good, if I'm hooked after an episode or 2 or even 3, I'm going to finish that sucker in like a couple of days. So might not be getting anything done depending on how good Ozark is, but I've heard nothing but good things. If you've seen it and you want to hit me up, if you got my number, shoot me a text, or if you want to follow me on Twitter, you can always respond to me there on Twitter at Paul Reindl SD. So that's what's going on in my world, not sports-wise. But coming up on this podcast, definitely got a few things in the NFL that we want to hit on. Got to talk about the fight of the decade, the fight of the century. I don't know, whatever you want to call it. Certainly the biggest fight in a long, long time. And we didn't know what to expect heading into it. Mayweather and McGregor, we had all that hype a couple months ago when they had the 3-country, 4-city, world tour. And it was incredibly entertaining after 1 and 2. And then they went to New York, and it was kind of just terrible, for lack of a better word, and then they went to England, and it didn't get any better from there. So weren't really sure how the fight itself was going to go. I mean, you kind of knew. You thought McGregor doesn't have a chance. This is a rookie boxer. This is a UFC fighter going up against one of the greatest boxers of all time. Somebody that 49 times had stepped into the ring with a professional boxer and won. So you kind of knew how this was going to go, but I've definitely got some thoughts on that fight. I thought it 100% lived up to the hype. 100. So definitely got some thoughts there. One thing, not a whole lot for MLB-wise in this edition of the Rinder Report, and that might just kind of be par for the course until we start inching our way towards the playoffs here, because football is back. College football is back. The NFL is back. And so that's going to be the majority of what is discussed on this podcast. I have got some Twitter highlights of the week for you. This is something that I don't do too often because, quite frankly, Twitter is just one heap of hot, steaming trash for the most part. Some of the worst people on earth. You can find them on Twitter. But there was 4 or 5 different things that I saw on Twitter in the last, 5 or 6 days that just absolutely made me laugh out loud. And I wanted to just share those with you guys. I promise I won't talk about it, or at least I won't talk about it in depth. Taylor Swift and her new single and the Twitter and social media, campaign, or, how she got rid of her Twitter and social and Instagram and all that. Won't go into it. Won't even talk about it because I know you don't care about it. Not nearly as much as I do. But hey, I'm Team Taylor. I'm a Swiftie. Whatever you got to say. And then in honor of football and football being back, I've got something I'm really looking forward to, and we're gonna save that for the very end of the podcast. So stick around for that. I promise you won't be disappointed. Well, you might be disappointed. Actually, you probably will be disappointed, but that's why I want you to stick around, so that you can tell me I'm full of shit, or you can text me or tweet me or whatever and comment on the podcast and say, what were you thinking? So that's what we got. But I want to start off circling back towards the NFL, and I want to get a little bit vulnerable. I'm certainly not shy about this. I have no problem talking about it, but it's not necessarily something that I just start a podcast with and just promote and broadcast out to whoever is out there listening in the Twitter sphere or anything like that. But look, when I was young, when I was 11 years old, my parents got divorced, and based on statistics, you or someone you know can probably relate to that and how sucky it can be. And I remember my mom, who is just the sweetest woman on earth. What's the line in Anchorman? Dorothy Mantooth is a saint. Yeah, okay, well, Mama Reindl is a saint, and don't you ever bad talk her. But I remember my mom, over the course of several years after this divorce, because the actual divorce, and I don't know if you've gone through this, whether yourself or maybe your parents, the actual divorce didn't happen for like years later, but they were separated. They were legally separated. So my parents, especially my mom, who I lived with, said, and I don't know why she said this, maybe just to try to be comforting to an 11-year-old kid who was going through obviously a very traumatic, tough time. She kept saying this line like, we're separated. We're going through a separation. And at the time, it kind of gave me hope. It gave me hope, like, wow, okay, well, it kind of sucks still, but I don't know, maybe they'll get back together. Like they're not divorced yet. They're not legally divorced. They're just separated. So maybe they'll get back together. Who knows? They didn't. and the reason I bring that up is because I think this relates to a stupid. It does. I don't even know why I'm talking about it on this podcast, because it doesn't even warrant a conversation. But enough people the rumor mill was churning that maybe the Chargers are going to realize, maybe Dean Spanos is going to think, oh man, this LA thing just ain't working out. We're only getting like 20,000 fans in our little soccer stadium up in Los Angeles, and maybe, I don't know, San Diego, can we work something out? No. The Chargers and the city of San Diego, they are legally separated right now. They're not divorced yet. They're going through the separation, the process that my parents and maybe your parents or somebody's parents that you know might have also gone through. They're separated, but they're not divorced. Look, just like Mama and Papa Reindl did not get back together, the Chargers are never coming back. And I hope that doesn't sound too harsh. If you're listening to this, I don't know if you were a lifelong Chargers fan. Maybe you don't care about the Chargers at all. You never have. Maybe you were a diehard and you just had to remove the knife from your back and you threw your jersey at Murphy Canyon Road and threw it into that pile and you're done with them. I don't know. So maybe that does sound harsh, but look, it's reality. They are gone. They gone, okay? There's nothing more to say. They are not coming back. The fact that was even going around on Twitter from more than a few people, and how Dean Spanos allegedly, and the Chargers and the NFL are allegedly, quote unquote, freaking out. No, they're not. Okay, this is going to take years. The Clippers, when they left San Diego and became the Los Angeles Clippers, it took them 30 years before they were even relevant in that city. It takes a lot of time. Look, if the Chargers were 12-4 last year instead of 5-11, they might be coming into Los Angeles with some hype. But it was still going to be tough for them, even with that good of a team, to cultivate a fan base in a brand new city. Especially a city that's got 10 plus major league teams in their city like Los Angeles does. Okay, Los Angeles didn't want the Chargers in the first place. They're stuck with them now. This is a process that's going to take years and years and years. Not this year, not next year. Okay, they claim they've sold out their season tickets. Great. It's only 27,000 people. It shouldn't be that hard to fill that stadium for an NFL game. I don't care how bad the team is. But to have the notion that maybe they're freaking out and they're going to come back to San Diego, it's not happening. The Chargers, they doubled their value just the day they moved. The day they changed their freaking Twitter handle and became the Los Angeles Chargers, all of a sudden they're worth a lot more money than they were in San Diego. It's coming out now. I mean, it should be obvious to you by now if you live in San Diego. It was clear the Chargers were never going to get a deal done, a stadium deal. It was not going to happen here in San Diego. The Chargers were going to have to kick in some money. And they weren't going to do that because they are the cheapest bunch of morons in professional sports. And that's just the way it is. I mean, my God, they fired Bob Wick, their locker room attendant, the equipment manager, I think was his official title. He had been with the team for 39 years, stuck with them through the move. And at the end of the preseason, they tell him, hey, you're gone, you're out, you're fired, with no reason why. This sweet old man, who I had never met, but by all accounts was the nicest guy you would ever meet. Players and people in the media and reporters, everybody had said that Bob Wick was the nicest guy, and these idiots in Los Angeles now, they just let him go. Was it to save a buck? I don't know. Were they going to get some 20-year-old intern to fill his role and they can pay him a fraction of what they're paying Bob Wick? Maybe. But this team doesn't know what they're doing. All right, the fight for LA is a joke. They don't know what they're doing. But it's going to be a lot of trial and error. They're not coming back to San Diego anytime soon. They're happy with their money now. They're happy with where their value is going to be, and they're going to be, they're going to be roommates. They're going to be the awkward, the awkward relative that is down on his luck, needs a place to stay until he finds a job. Oh, I swear, 1 week tops, and I'll move out. Right? No. How often does that happen, right? And 1 week turns into 2 weeks. Hey, have you found a job yet? Hey, it's getting a little crammed in here. you plan on moving out anytime soon? Oh, what? You're just gonna live here now? Okay, we'll figure that out. They're gonna be roommates with the Rams in Inglewood in what will be the nicest stadium in the world, and that's just the way it is. They're content with that, apparently. They're fine with being the roommates, the tenants. They're not going to be the owners. They're not going to be the homeowners at all. They're going to be paying rent to Stan Kroenke in Kroenkeville or whatever cheesy name we end up dubbing the super stadium in Inglewood. And they're fine with that. Now, Dean Spanos might sell the team. In fact, I think he will sell the team. I think it takes minimum of 5 years after a relocation or once he pays off the relocation fees, which he set up a payment plan, something along those lines where he can then sell the team after that's been completed. I think that's going to happen pretty damn quick as soon as that process, whatever it ends up being, is completed. Dean's out because Dean is the laughingstock of the NFL. We just talked about this in episode 51, how the Chargers are the laughingstock of the league and how they're getting trolled by other professional teams in the NFL. Dean doesn't know what he's doing. He's the cheapest owner. He's an idiot when it comes to making these decisions. He does not know what he's doing, but he's not stupid enough to move back to San Diego. And I know that sounds harsh. I do realize, I acknowledge that. And I would love for an NFL team in San Diego to be here. But I'm just here to say it's not going to happen. So the fact that this was even an idea, that this was even a rumor floating around last week or over the last few days, I figured it had to be addressed. I couldn't believe it. You know, a little pause there because one of the luxuries of doing a podcast at home is that you get a nice, delicious, frosty beverage. And normally in some podcasts that you might listen to, this would be a time where they plug a brewery or a brand of beer that sponsors their podcast. But you know what? These guys don't sponsor this podcast, so to hell with them. I'm not going to tell you what I'm drinking. You're just going to have to believe me. So I want to move on. Over the weekend, we had the super fight, the mega fight, whatever you want to call it, the fight of the year, the fight of the century. This had been billed for a long time now. That this has been hyped up. A couple years of, will this ever happen? We don't know. And then they signed the contracts, and then they had the hype tour that I talked about, and we finally got to the fight on August 26th. And I gotta say, it was outstanding. We got 10 rounds of boxing. And I've talked about this on the podcast before. I'm not going to sit here and dissect the fight, the X's and O's and anything like that, because I don't know what I'm talking about when it comes to combat sports. I'm not that experienced. I enjoy watching them, and that's about as far as it goes. I think Conor McGregor is one of, if not the most entertaining athletes in sports right now. That guy can sell a fight. He sold a fight in which a MMA fighter who had zero boxing experience got into the ring with somebody who was 49-0, one of the greatest boxers of all time, and he made it compelling. That's what Conor McGregor does. Any other boxer or any other UFC fighter gets into that ring, it's not worth watching. It's just not. And I've even heard the idea floating around like, maybe this is going to be a new trend. Like maybe once or twice a year, we'll have a crossover between boxing and MMA. I think that's stupid because I think Conor McGregor is the only guy that can make that captivating, that can captivate an audience and make that and hype it up enough to where that would be worth watching. And then you throw in Floyd Mayweather, who obviously can promote the hell out of himself, and he does a great job in that. And at 49-0, looking for number 50, this fight sure had a lot of the elements, a lot of the ingredients to be a good fight. But then you're thinking, okay, Floyd's going to knock him out in 2 rounds. Like Conor's not going to land a single punch. He doesn't have a shot. And yet, he did. Conor won the first 3 rounds, again, as far as I'm concerned, which who knows if there's any merit to that whatsoever, but a lot of people on Twitter that do know what they're talking about, they seem to agree. Conor came out swinging, and I think I said it a podcast or 2 ago, if Conor was going to have any chance at winning this fight, he was going to have to do it in like the first 3 or 4 rounds, and it was pretty clear after about 4 rounds, he was gassed. He had nothing left. and Floyd started to take over. Okay, he was just doing the rope-a-dope. He was taking his hits. He was letting Conor tire himself out, and then he was able to kind of just dissect Conor a little bit, get in some punches, and then towards the end of the match or the end of the fight, rounds 8, 9, and 10, it was just over. But the only question that I have for those that watched the fight were the ones that were asking, and you might be listening to this, and you might be the person that I'm talking to. There were a lot of people out there that said, why are they stopping the fight? How could they stop it? Because Conor, he never went down. And I think that's even more credit to Conor McGregor, that he not only lasted 10 rounds, but he never went down. In fact, here, I'll play. This was Conor McGregor after the fight, and this was, to me, the highlight of the entire fight, because Conor McGregor, whenever he opens his mouth, he's usually good for a soundbite or two, and here's what he had to say.
I thought it was close. I thought I had him in the early rounds. I thought he was getting in the middle towards the end. Where was the final 2 rounds? Let me wobble back to my corner. Let me try and recompose myself. You know what I mean? You've got to put me out. I'm brand new. I'm clear spoken. It's not bothering me, so I don't know what way to feel, to be honest. I'm just happy I'm draped in the flag. Happy I was able to bring my team along, the country with me, and just getting to perform for a different crowd. No one's taking these type of risks, so fuck it. You can lay into me all you want. I'll take it on the chin. I'll take it wrapped around the neck and on live TV. I've took them both, so it's another day for me.
Just let me wobble back to me corner. Oh, I tweeted this out when I saw that quote on Saturday night. That is my new line. The next time I go out with some friends and we're bar hopping and the beer is flowing, the alcohol is being consumed. Maybe a friend says, "Hey man, like maybe slow down. I think that that should be your last one. You're not doing too well." I'll say, "Hey, let me wobble back to me corner." And I'll probably have a horrible rendition of a Conor McGregor accent while I do that. But I get it. Conor wanted to keep the fight going, so everyone says, why didn't they keep going? Why did he stop the fight? What is wrong with you? That's my question to you. If you were wondering that, if you were asking yourself that question, why did they stop the fight? What the hell is wrong with you? It was clear that fight was over. Conor couldn't even hold his hands up. He wasn't defending himself at all. He was wobbling. Sure, he never went down. Good. But, come on. We're talking about a sport where you're a couple of hits away to the temple. You get hit in the wrong area, and it could be serious life, long-term, long-lasting issues here, okay? We don't need anyone dying on the mat, okay? We don't need anyone getting their brains bashed in because of a fight like this. The fight was over. Conor was done. And I'm sure, candidly, not in front of a camera, he would admit the same thing, okay? In front of the camera, he's going to say, why did they stop the fight? Let me keep going. Of course. I don't know a lot of athletes that wouldn't say that. But if I just have a feeling that if you caught Conor candidly, if maybe he told his wife or something, his girlfriend, I don't know if he's married or not, maybe he told her, yeah, you know what, I was done. He couldn't even hold his gloves in front of his face to protect himself. Floyd absolutely was picking him apart. It was just a matter of time before he did get completely knocked out. I just don't see why we needed to see that. I think you got to be some sort of bloodthirsty if you were wondering why they stopped the fight, because it was clear as day that fight was over, and I thought the referee called it right at the right time. But overall, an absolutely outstanding fight, very entertained. It was worth every penny that I paid, which was, let's just say I was a VIP member as I watched it on a computer. I'll just leave it at that because I don't want anyone coming after me. But you can probably put the pieces of the puzzle together there. I thought it completely lived up to the hype, and this was a long time coming, and I certainly was not disappointed. And hey, we got a soundbite like this out of it.
Let me wobble back to me corner.
Let me wobble back to me corner. Oh, that is just so good. All right, real quick, we're coming up with the clips 20 minutes. Like I said, hey, this is going to be a short podcast, okay? I wanted to keep it short and sweet for you. No guest on this on this episode of the Rhino Report, but do have a few things in the works, hoping to get a couple of guests. We'll just leave it at that because I want it to be somewhat of a surprise if I can in fact make that happen. But wanted to move on over to Major League Baseball. Look, this is the dog days of summer. The Padres, they're just kind of meh at this point. I don't have a whole lot to say. Hunter Renfroe going down to AAA, that kind of surprised me. I wasn't necessarily expecting that at all. But at the end of the day, like, I don't know how many times I've said it. We knew what this season was heading into it. If anything, the Padres have exceeded expectations in the sense that they're not last. I mean, they haven't been playing well as of late. I think they're like 4-6 or 3-7 or something like that in their last 10 games. But you know, they're ahead of the Giants, who are having a horrible year. They're like 40 games out of first place. So I don't know how much that of a positive that really is, but I just don't have a whole lot to say on the Padres right now. I was really happy to see, I think since the last time I did a podcast, Andy Green did get his 3-year contract extension, and I'm a big fan of that because I'm a big fan of Andy Green, and I know there was a lot of discussion about him being soft, especially in June and July, and I even had an entire podcast dedicated to calling the Padres soft, but that was a soft moment. This is not a soft guy in Andy Green, okay? I think he's the right guy for this team. He's young. He can relate to these players. They're all kind of going to have this chip on their shoulder of like, hey, we're the young guys. We're trying to make a name for ourselves. He's not some experienced veteran, old manager. He's trying to make a name for himself too amongst managers, while these players are trying to make a name for themselves amongst major league players. So I think he's the right fit for the guy. It just doesn't seem like it would do any good to me to switch managers right at the beginning of this big process that we're in, the tank, and embrace the tank and trust the process, or whatever other Joel Embiid phrase that you want to cut and paste into this podcast here. The Padres are on a very distinct process, and to just throw your manager out and bring in somebody new, I just don't see what good that would do. If Andy Green is the guy and these are all the players, these are your chips that you're banking on, then see it through. If it doesn't work out, then we're right back to where we've been for the last 10 years as Padres fans, okay? There's really nothing to lose. So I was glad to see that. But there was one story that I saw in Major League Baseball that I don't know why it hasn't gotten the hype that it probably should. Maybe I'm just not watching enough MLB Network. I've been watching a lot more NFL Network now as football season gets closer and closer. And then, of course, just whatever's on SportsCenter or ESPN. But Giancarlo Stanton just recently hit his 50th home run. 50. We haven't had a player do that. I wrote it down. I will tell you when the last player to hit 50 was. Obviously, we had this steroid era of the late 90s and into the early to mid 2000s. And since then, it seems like what's a high home run rate over the last 10 years or so? Like 30? Maybe 40? Like 40 was like, oh my God, this guy hit 40 home runs. Wow. Miguel Cabrera hit 42 home runs last year. What? That's great. Giancarlo Stanton has hit 50 home runs, and the month of August hasn't even finished yet. I think that's incredible for the non-steroid era, the post-steroid era, whatever you want to call it. And there's been discussion about is the MLB juicing the baseballs to get more home runs and up viewership? I don't know. I don't think so. I think that's kind of a silly theory. I think you should probably take the tinfoil hat off if that's what you're riding, if you're riding that theory hard. But Giancarlo Stanton is an absolute beast. He is a phenom, and he hit his 50th home run. And like I said, he's got over a month left to go before the season's over. He could easily get to 60. And that would be we haven't seen 60 since Barry Bonds, I think, right? Barry Bonds hit 73 or whatever in 2001. Have we, I don't know off the top of my head. I'm probably forgetting somebody that had hit in the ballpark there in the neighborhood. No pun intended on the ballpark line. But Giancarlo Stanton's 50 home runs are the most since Prince Fielder hit 50 in 2007. So it's been 10 years since somebody had eclipsed 5-0. And he's going to pass that, assuming he hits one home run between now and the end of September. Giancarlo Stanton will break that. Ryan Howard, remember that guy? He hit 58 the year before in 2006. And then Andrew Jones, I think he hit 57 in 2005. And then prior to that, that's, the steroid era. That's the Bonds and Palmeiro and all those guys. Really, it was Barry Bonds is going to be the one that, Alex Rodriguez, I guess. But Barry Bonds is going to be the one that, along with Jason Giambi, I suppose, goes down as the face of the steroid era. But I don't know. I hadn't seen that. Maybe it's because I'm not in Miami. Maybe it's because I'm on the other side of the country. I just hadn't seen, it was like a little blip across my Twitter timeline that Giancarlo Stanton hit his 50th home run and it's August, 20 whatever. I don't know. Had you heard about that? Did you know that before you heard it here on this podcast? Maybe you did, maybe you didn't, but I think that's kind of the point, is if you hadn't heard it, what the hell, guys? Like, why has this not gotten enough hype? I don't know. I saw that, and that was definitely what I wanted to hit as far as Major League Baseball. But a couple other things to get to now. We're going to have a little bit of fun here. I said I had some Twitter highlights, and I'm going through my likes on Twitter because I made sure if I saw something that really made me LOL or even LMAO, or dare I say ROFL. There was a few tweets that made me do all three of those. And one of them, first of all, this wasn't even really a tweet in particular, but if you're not following this account, you're doing Twitter wrong. You need to follow at CAPT Andrew Luck. Captain Andrew Luck. It's Andrew Luck with his giant neck beard, and he's dressed in like colonial, like, I don't even know, it's some sort of war garb, and every tweet starts off as "Dear Mother" or something like that, and it's about what the Colts are going on, what they have going on, who their next opponent is, but the way it's almost phrased in like old English. So the last one that I liked was, "Dearest Mother, the unit continues to follow my trail of neck, beard, hair back home. My sidearm remains useless. Frustrating. Yours, Andrew." So there's another one. "The dearest mother, the unit marches home with great haste, for there is a streak of Bengals on the move. One final fruitless stand, Andrew." So it's like he's writing a letter back home in the 1800s or something, and you're still getting a little insight on what's going on with the Colts. If that was the only account that I followed that had anything to do with the Indianapolis Colts, I'd still know what was going on, because just on those two tweets alone, I know that the Colts are having their final fruitless stand, their last preseason game, against a streak of Bengals. They're going to be playing the Cincinnati Bengals in game number 4 of the preseason on Thursday, and now I know that. Obviously, we know about Andrew Beard and his neck beard. Andrew Luck and his neck beard. I think I just called him Andrew Beard. His neck beard trail as they follow it back home. So they're going back to Indianapolis, and my sidearm remains useless. So yeah, Andrew Luck still dealing with a shoulder injury. And so that is that. What else got me going on Twitter? So Ryan Reynolds, this has nothing to do with sports. Like, not even a little bit, but Ryan Reynolds, as I'm clicking through, this was August 25th. I believe that was Friday night. He tweets, "Happy birthday to my amazing wife." And his wife is actress Blake Lively. She's just, Blake, just gorgeous. And there was a picture. So it says, at Van City Reynolds, that's Ryan Reynolds' official Twitter account, "Happy birthday to my amazing wife." And it's a picture of him and her on what looks to be a red carpet. He is wearing a tuxedo. She is wearing a nice pink or purple dress. But there's one thing. He has almost completely cropped her out of the picture. I mean, as I'm looking at it, it's cracking me up. It's just a picture of Ryan Reynolds smiling as he says, "Happy birthday to my amazing wife." You just see like a fraction of her face and like one of her eyes, and that was the picture that he chose to wish Blake Lively a happy birthday, and that made me smile. That made me happy. Next, we got two more that I wanted to get to. Joe Thomas, let's see, where was that at? Joe Thomas tweeted out a screenshot of a tweet. It was a screenshot of a television. So Joe Thomas, of course, lineman for the Cleveland Browns, tweets out a picture that somebody, I would assume, had sent to him. And I want to make sure I pull it up here. It was a picture. Somebody's watching the game at home. There we go. Somebody's watching the Cleveland Browns game, the preseason game. I think it was week number 2 at home. And they took a picture of their television because it says 11th season, Joe Thomas, left tackle. And then, usually we'll say like a tidbit, like led the league and, for a defensive lineman, led the league in sacks last year or whatever. His little fact, his little tidbit was first offensive lineman in NFL history. That's it. That's all it said. It didn't say first offensive lineman in NFL history to do this. First offensive lineman in NFL history to complete this. It just said Joe Thomas, left tackle, first offensive lineman in NFL history. So he took a picture of that, and all he tweeted was #blessed. And when you go to Joe Thomas's Twitter account now, his bio, all it says is first offensive lineman in NFL history. I don't know what it said before that, but that's what it says now. And that was so good. And then last but surely not least, circling back to MMA, and I'm not going to get into it really at all because I don't know anything about it, but John Bones Jones, he got popped for yet another drug test last week. Another failed drug test. I don't know how many this makes for him, but it just seems like that's the narrative that we now can expect from John Jones. And so at John Jones, who is now verified on Twitter, tweets, "Welp, either my tweet about cats barfing on my bare feet went super viral, or at Johnny Bones done fucked up his life again." And it was a screenshot of his Twitter activity. It says, "Your tweet activity." And it's just flatlined. And then all of a sudden it shoots up. It's a bar graph. There's just nothing. Bam! And it said, "Your tweets earned 163,626 impressions over the last 24 hours. So what that means is that John Jones, the news breaks out. This was on August 22nd, so this is a little over a week ago. The news comes out that John Bones Jones, who had failed the drug test and was going to be stripped of a title and all that news comes out, and everybody that wants to go tweet, they're tagging at John Jones, not Johnny Bones. Johnny Bones is the MMA fighter, John Bones Jones. And when you type in at John Jones, you get Tech Geek, #Game Dev, Cat Fancier, author of How I Escaped Evangelical Hell, a memoir. So that is John Jones, who has 15,000 followers on Twitter. And then when you go to at Johnny Bones, who is who you really wanted to find when you were tagging John Bones Jones in your tweets about how he done effed up his life as at John Jones so eloquently put. Yeah, he's the one that you wanted. He's got the 2 million followers on Twitter. So I just thought that was funny. That was pretty obvious that at John Jones, whoever he is, the author from New York, I think he's his phone is just blowing up. He has no idea why his phone is just, the battery has gone from 100 to 0 real quick because he's got all these notifications. His phone keeps popping off because the news that John Bones Jones had failed another drug test. I don't know. Made me laugh. Maybe it didn't make you laugh. I don't know. But thanks for sticking this far through the podcast. So as I wrap it up, I said I was gonna end it with something fun. That was something fun, but this is, I think, going to be a little more fun. And in honor of football being back, the NFL, college football. I went to a high school football game on Friday night. Go Grossmont, and even though they lost, whatever, go Hillers. Football is back. I could not be happier. So I thought, what better way to end the podcast than with my top 5 fictional football teams. So whether it was from a movie or a television show, my top 5 fictional football teams. If you know me at all, you know I'm a movie guy. You know I like my TV shows. Like I said at the beginning of the podcast, pray for Paul. Give me your T's and your P's, because I'm starting Ozark here sometime today. Later tonight, I'll be starting that show. Luckily, there's only 11 episodes, so it shouldn't be too bad. But I do like my TV. I do like my movies, especially my sports-related movies and television shows. So this one was a little bit tough, but coming in with an honorable mention. They did not crack the top 5 because we just didn't quite see enough of them. But I'm going to go with the Gotham Rogues, because this team looked like they could compete. They looked tough. They looked angry. They looked like they were ready to beat the Pittsburgh whoever they were playing. And in the middle of their damn game, Bane has to come flying in and just completely wreck the field. The field splits in half, and Bane is sitting there and he's making his announcement to the entire crowd, the NFL crowd of like 60,000 people. And I was really looking forward to seeing what the Gotham Rogues had. I wanted to see what the kind of offense they ran. I wanted to see how their defense looked. And we just never got a chance to see that in The Dark Knight Rises. So I was disappointed with that, but I wanted to include the Gotham Rogues as an honorable mention. So coming in at number 5, I'm going to give it to the Giants from the movie Little Giants. Okay, this was a team that had the odds stacked against them. And that's going to be a theme probably with a lot of these teams. The underdogs, the odds stacked against them. But the way that Danny O'Shea, played brilliantly by Rick Moranis, of course, the way that he led his daughter, Becky the Icebox, and Junior against this team that was just bigger, stronger, faster, just better football players and better athletes, against his, what was his brother's name? Kevin O'Shea. They had no business winning that game. And the Little Giants, behind the brilliant play calling by offensive coordinator, I think his name was Tad. I haven't seen that movie in a long, long time. And when they get John Madden shows up, makes a cameo, and some of the Dallas Cowboys, they show up. I absolutely love the Little Giants. They prevailed. They won the big game. And Danny O'Shea was able to stand up to big brother Kevin O'Shea and say, I beat you, big bro. So the Giants from Little Giants, they come in at number 5. At number 4, I'm going to go with the Mean Machine from The Longest Yard. Not the Burt Reynolds original, but the Adam Sandler 2003, 2004, somewhere in there. The Adam Sandler rendition of The Longest Yard, The Mean Machine. This was a game, it was a throwaway game. It was a tune-up game for the guards. The guards were supposed to beat these convicts. And Adam Sandler and Chris Rock and Burt Reynolds himself, they round up a group of the biggest, baddest inmates at this state penitentiary in like Texas, I think it was. And they get these inmates who can go ahead. I mean, you've seen the movie. They're able to get some revenge on the guards by beating the hell out of them. And with the team down like 4 touchdowns at halftime, Adam Sandler wills his team to victory after promising to the warden that he would throw the game. And changing his mind in like middle of the third quarter, they rally back and the guards lose to a bunch of inmates in a game that Jim Rome called on ESPN. And fictional Jim Rome on fictional ESPN, of course. And the inmates won. So I got to give Mean Machine, they're coming in at the number 4 slot. Number 3, I go with the Washington Sentinels from the movie The Replacements. Very underrated football movie, in my opinion. Keanu Reeves, and maybe that's where it lost you, was the fact that Keanu Reeves was the quarterback. But Keanu Reeves behind head coach Gene Hackman, who I think was the last coach to ever wear a suit on a football field. You got to respect that, especially in, I think, like 2000, this movie came out, and Gilbert Franklin and Danny, the crazy, ex-Navy SEALs, all these bunch of misfits. See, there's the underdog tone again. These bunch of misfits as the NFL stars were on strike and they were out picketing in front of the stadium because they wanted $25 million a year instead of $20 million a year. All these guys that never got a shot in the NFL, never got a chance to go pro, they get their chance during the replacement. They're the replacement team. And they go on and they beat the Dallas Cowboys, they beat the fictional New Orleans Saints, and they clinch a spot in the playoffs against a Dallas Cowboys team that had all of their starters back. Their guys had crossed the line, and Gene Hackman said, screw you to the quarterback, the pretty boy quarterback, and he stuck with Keanu Reeves, and that team was able to win a game in Washington, D.C., the Washington Sentinels, and they were able to clinch a playoff berth for the first time in God knows how many years. And it was their last game before the NFL stars returned to their team and took their positions back as starters. And it was kind of a cool moment there at the end as they all kind of shake each other's hands and say, look, we got one last chance. And I think Gene Hackman even says something like, you guys got to live something that most people only dream of, and that's a second chance. So I go with the Washington Sentinels in at number 3. At number 2, and this was a tough 1 and 2 for me, but at number 2, I'm going to go with the 2006 Texas 5A state champion Dillon Panthers from the television show Friday Night Lights. Now, there was a movie, Friday Night Lights, as well. Love that movie, but because I was going to throw in the television show, I like the television show so much more than the movie that I was going to only go with one Friday Night Lights representative. So I'm going to go with the 2006 Dillon Panthers because after All-Pro, All-American senior quarterback Jason Street went down in episode 1 and was paralyzed and never going to return to the football field. This team and all of their hopes and dreams for the season were gone. And behind dorky, quirky, annoying, mopey, bitchy Matt Saracen, as you can tell, I'm not a fan of Matt Saracen, but he was able to come in. I think he was only a sophomore, and he was able to rally this team behind Brian Smash Williams and Tim Riggins, and this team was able to go all the way to the end, and they became Texas state champions in 2006. So I'm going with season 1 of Friday Night Lights, the 06 5A Texas state champ Dillon Panthers at number 2, which leaves me with one last spot. The number 1 fictional football team of all time, I gotta go with the Titans. The TC Titans from Remember the Titans, as coached brilliantly by Denzel Washington. This was a team that was one of the first teams, especially at least in their neck of the country, in their part of the country, to integrate blacks and whites together, and they broke the color barrier, and that was a big no-no during this time. I think it took place in the 60s, and people were just not ready for that, as silly and really horrible as that sounds here 50 years later. They were able to come together at training camp. They were able to win and fight all this adversity, and other coaches and people in the town and neighboring towns and rival towns that had a problem with them being, black people and white people playing together. That was a big problem for a lot of people back in that day. And Denzel Washington just brilliantly leads his team. He coaches these young men and tells them, he gives them so much life lessons like, hey, this is about something bigger than football. And clearly it was. But as far as the X's and O's, as far as the actual football goes, Denzel Washington demanded perfection, and he got perfection. Even after Gary Bertier got in that car accident and was paralyzed from the waist down, Julius something, I forgot his last name, Julius was able to lead that defense, that featured a horrible Ryan Gosling, who just was a complete liability at cornerback. He had no business being on that field. Petey, Turk from Scrubs on that. There's a lot of people on that movie. I think it came out in like 99 or 2000. So a lot of these guys were just kind of starting their acting careers, and you didn't really, maybe not realize it at the time, but you're like, wow, I know that guy. Hey, I remember that guy. A lot of semi-big names in that movie, but the Titans were able to come back. They were state champs. They won it for Gary Bertier. They defied all the odds. They came together as brothers. They broke the color barrier. And when you factor all of that in, it was a no-brainer. The Titans had to be the number 1 team. The Dillon Panthers, they did win state, but they did lose a couple of games, at least one game, I believe, in that championship season. So because the Titans, they went undefeated, you got to give it to them. You got to give them the title. So the TC Titans from Remember the Titans, the number 1 all-time fictional football team. So with that said, that's going to do it for this episode of the podcast of the Ryan Report, episode 52. We'll be back with another podcast sometime next week, Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday, most likely. I want to thank you for tuning in. As always, got to end it with my little plug. If you want to subscribe to the podcast, please do. If you have not already done that, if you have an iPhone, you can just go to the podcast app. It's the purple microphone thing. Just click that, hit subscribe, and then as soon as I come out with a new podcast, you get that right sent to your phone. It'll tell you, hey, new podcast available. You can subscribe and comment. Please give me the feedback. Tell me what you liked. Tell me what you don't like. Tell me what you never want to hear again. Tell me what you want to hear more of. I have no problem doing that. I'd like to accompany my listeners as best I can. You can also go to thereindelreport.com. All the podcast interviews and everything like that are uploaded onto that website as well. And of course, you can follow me on Twitter at Paul Reindl SD. So that's going to do it. Go Titans. Let me wobble back to me corner, and I will talk to you next time.